29th of January 2025, and my name is Mintse van der Velde, and this webinar is managed from Geneva. The title of this webinar is 75% Leadership Training for Women and Youth, Leading from the Heart, Serving Humanity. We are happy today to have a special guest, Maria Elfrieda Pradervand, also known as Ellie Pradervand, who is the President, CEO and founder of the World Women's Summit Foundation, an NGO based here in Geneva. This short introduction on the World Goodwill and this webinar will be followed by a World Goodwill meditation. Thereafter, Ellie Pradervand will present some topics from her work on leadership training for women and youth. For the discussion, you can put your questions in the chat, or at the discussion time you can just raise your hand and we will give you the floor. I will keep my introduction short so that we will have enough time for the meditation and the presentation by Ellie. As you know, the Goodwill Meditation Group is a worldwide group of people who link up each Wednesday at noon to meditate on goodwill. The group aims to stimulate and strengthen the goodwill that is expressed by humanity as a whole. This webinar meets the last Wednesday of each month and provides a platform for individuals to come together to use the goodwill meditation and to discuss our common work. For a long time, Ellie has been pushing me to write something on right human relationships, which obviously form a fundamental part of the spreading of goodwill. What are right human relations? Why talk about right human relationships? If they are not there yet, why is that so? Before I expand a bit more on right human relationships, let us quiet our minds and link with the group in sounding the mantra of the new group of world servers. May the power of the one life pour through the group of all true servers. May the love of the one soul characterize the lives of all who seek to aid the great ones. May I fulfill my part in the one work through self-forgetfulness, harmlessness, and right speech. When pondering on right human relationships, a very simple approach comes to mind. Our grandmother would tell us what is right and what is wrong. That has all to do with right human relationships. And somewhere we all know that. Even though this may be less true for future generations, where more and more young people get their information from Google and TikTok rather than from their grandparents. We can go much further back in time too. About 2,500 years ago, the Buddha formulated the Four Noble Truths, which exposed the causes of human trouble and pointed out to the cure. His message can be paraphrased in the following words: cease to identify yourself with material things, gain a proper sense of spiritual values, cease regarding possessions and earthly existence as of major importance, and follow the noble eightfold path, which is the path of right relations to God and to each other, as well as to other kingdoms of nature, and thus be happy. The steps on this eightfold path are the following: right values, right speech, right mode of living, right thinking, right aspiration, right conduct, right effort, and right rapture or true happiness. To each of these 8 steps we could dedicate a whole webinar, which of course we won't do now. Nevertheless, pondering on these steps is well worth the while. Especially now we live in a world where fact-checking is left to ourselves rather than to external sources. The Buddha's ancient method is as new today as it was when he spoke his words on earth. In 1945, Alice Bailey wrote in the aftermath of the World War, and I quote, "A recognition of its truth and value is desperately needed, and the following of the 8 right ways of living will enable humanity to find liberation." End of quote. Maybe it is surprising that these thoughts are about 2,500 years old. We may perhaps claim that human thinking is evolving, which it is, but these ideas are still very, very needed in our modern world. At the time of the Buddha, his thoughts were transmitted by his followers, or disciples if you want. There was no internet, there was no TikTok of today. Whether you are a supporter or an opponent, one thing is sure: the headlines of the coming 4 years will be dominated by Trump. Please don't get me wrong. I'm not talking about politics or taking a position for or against. I'm simply observing that we live in an interconnected world where events, not necessarily news or information, dominate the public sphere in large parts of the world. Our world, that's to say the world we have created ourselves. Imagine just for a second that these headlines would be dominated by the 8 steps of the Buddha. We all know that about half a century after the Buddha, and based on the foundation of his teaching, the Christ raised the superstructure of the brotherhood of man to form an expression of the love of God. For the first time in human history, the love of God was embodied in a man, and Christ inaugurated the era of love. 2,000 years later, that expression of divine love is still in the making. The world is not yet full of love, and few there are that understand the true meaning of this word. Still, some progress has been made. From this perspective, we can think about welfare and right human relations and ask ourselves, what is welfare but love in action? What are right human relations but love among men, groups and nations? What is international cooperation but love on a world scale? Those are the things which the love of God in Christ expressed. And those are the things which all men and women of goodwill can contribute here and now to bring into being. Of course, there is opposition, especially in the world of today. The path of goodwill is not a broad highway to peace and prosperity. It is rather a narrow mountain path full of obstacles. The potency of the awakened spirit of mankind, however, expresses itself in the large number of men and women of goodwill all over the world. The attempt is to bring about change on a vast scale, and this in spite of opposition, an opposition which can only be temporary in success. A few words about glamour and delusion. Most of us will be aware of the fact that on our path towards a better world, we should get rid of glamour and delusion. This is not new, as it goes back to even the times of Patanjali, that's to say thousands of years ago. Yet, one consequence of the internet is that instead of helping us to get rid of glamour and delusion, it is amplifying them. and in such a subtle manner that many don't even notice it. It is trapping millions of people into a way of life that is the exact opposite of the four freedoms mentioned by the Buddha, and which we have discussed a minute ago. Unfortunately, there is no quick fix to get rid of glamours and delusions, as we all very well know. To conclude on a rather positive note, we all know that we always have the opportunity to start anew. Symbolically, many people formulated their good wishes at the beginning of this new year. The deeper thoughts behind this have to do with the law of invocation and evocation, but I will not go into that now. At the end of the Second World War, Alice Bailey had something to say which now, under slightly different circumstances, still holds much truth in it. I quote, "Today, as it views the crumbling, devastated world, mankind has a fresh opportunity to reject selfish, materialistic motives and philosophy, and to begin those processes which will, steadily and gradually, bring about its liberation. It will then be possible for man to tread the lighted way which leads back to the divine source of light and love." End of the quotation. With these introductory thoughts on right remunerations, let us now do our Goodwill meditation together. We link up in thought with all those people throughout the world who are working with this Goodwill meditation group. Then reflect upon the fact of relationship. You are related to your family, your community, your nation, the world of nations, and you are related to the one humanity, made up of all races and nations. Let me use the mantra of unification. The souls of all are one, and I am one with them. I seek to love, not hate. I seek to serve and not exact due service. I seek to heal, not hurt. Let pain bring due reward of light and love. Let the soul control the outer form and life and all events, and bring to light the love that underlies the happenings of the time. Let vision come and insight. Let the future stand revealed. Let inner union demonstrate and outer cleavages be gone. Let love prevail. Let all people love. Reflect upon your own and humanity's relationship with all beings who dwell in the higher realms of mind and heart, the spiritual hierarchy of saints, rishis, bodhisattvas, and masters honored by all the world's religions and spiritual groups. Imagine that you are standing together within the center of the spiritual hierarchy, immersed in the consciousness of the heart of love. For some, this heart of love is known as the Christ. Other faiths have other names for the one at the center, such as Maitreya, the Imam Mahdi, or the Kalki avatar. Maintaining that high point of contact, let your thoughts reach out to include all members of the human family in whom the energy of goodwill is active. use the affirmation: in the center of all love I stand. From that center I, the soul, will outward move. From that center I, the one who serves, will work. May the love of the Divine Self be shed abroad in my heart, through my group, and throughout the world. Then visualize the energy of love flowing from the hierarchy through the men and women of Goodwill and into the hearts and minds of all people, infusing them with goodwill and creating loving and harmonious human relationships. Then meditate on ways of spreading goodwill, creating right human relationships, and restoring peace on earth. Realize that you're helping build a channel between the spiritual hierarchy and humanity, through which the energy of goodwill may flow, uniting humanity, solving its problems, and healing all cleavages. And finally, linked in thought with men and women of Goodwill all over the world, we say the great invocation in its adapted form, which will follow. We say it with deliberation and full commitment to its meaning, knowing that we are radiating its potent energies to humanity. The great invocation. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into human minds. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into human hearts. May the coming one return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide all little human wills, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center which we call the human race, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. Thank you very much. And then it's now my pleasure to give the floor to Ellie Pradervand, who will give her talk on 75% leadership training for women and youth, leading from the heart and serving humanity. Ellie, you have the floor.
Okay, good afternoon, and thank you for attending my presentation. It is a privilege to present myself and part of my work today at the World Goodwill Meditation Meeting. My name is Maria Elfriede Pradervand, and I'm known as Ellie, and I'm the founder of the Women's World Summit Foundation, which was created in 1991 in Geneva as a Swiss not-for-profit international NGO with UN consultative status, serving the advancement of women's and children's rights and the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So let me begin by thanking Mr. Mintze von der Velde for his kind invitation to share with you today our new campaign, the WWSF Leadership Training Forums for Women and Youth, Leading from the Heart, Serving Humanity. Mr. Mintze was one of our invited speakers at the last leadership training for women and youth on 17 December, where he shared all about World Goodwill, a love in action, and what are right human relations. Two themes which are becoming key questions in our changing world to find guidance about how are we going to live together in the future and serve humanity. His message was well received, and we will include it in the future in leadership trainings. So let me share briefly about the creation of the Women's World Summit Foundation and how I got personally involved in contributing to making our world a better place. Our mission is to serve the realization of women's and children's rights via various annual campaigns and programs which are presented on our website, woman.ch, all of which are new ideas that did not exist before. Our principles of action include service and integrity, empowerment and partnership building, creativity and sharing, respect for human rights and right human relations, and leading from the heart, serving humanity. So what inspired and educated me to start an NGO like the Women's World Summit Foundation? It was in fact my work for 10 years between 1980 and 1990, establishing and leading a Swiss section of the International Hunger Project, which some of you may know. It was very, very popular. A global NGO headquartered in New York that introduced this campaign in 1980, and which is about ending the persistence of hunger in the world by the year 2000. This highly sensitive topic became my training in how to mobilize civil society to commit to and participate in achieving such an urgent social goal. Managing the Swiss Hunger Project was a great transformational experience for me, where I learned about world's inequalities between haves and not haves, about hunger and poverty in too many countries, about binding UN conventions and world conferences, promises for the future, human rights, and so much more. I really enjoyed the public mobilization aspect of that project, with many people signing the Ending Hunger membership card, on which they declared their own personal contributions to achieving the aim, the end of hunger by 2000. So we did well, learned a lot, and loved our regular public activities, trained volunteers, organized conferences, and stayed in close collaboration with the headquarters in New York. But to our surprise, we learned that the Swiss relief organizations based in Bern did not support the American style of broadly mobilizing the public to commit to ending hunger by 2000. And our Swiss campaign became a problem for them, and also for us, as we could no longer present in Swiss schools. However, we continued as we realized that if we do not begin to end hunger and starvation in the planet, there is no way we can thrive in our evolution and well-being. So to make a long story short, the last project I organized in the Swiss Hunger Project under my leadership in 1990, and in collaboration with the UK partners, was the delivery of 65,000 letters and postcards written by school children and youth from 16 countries around the world, addressed to then President Mikhail Gorbachev of the Soviet Union at the time, proposing in their personal letters to him to send food instead of weapons to the hungry children in Ethiopia, where a war was going on. And the children heard about their famine in schools and in families. The idea of writing a letter came from an 8-year-old boy in London who wrote a first personal message to Mikhail Gorbachev, which his teacher shared in the class, and which generated interest and a request from other students to also write letters, which spread rapidly into many other schools in the UK and also in other countries. The Swiss Hunger Project had joined the campaign earlier on, and I asked the London team to begin the planning on how to deliver all these messages to the Russian president. I learned that there was no such a plan, which was unacceptable to me, and I replied that if there is no delivery plan, I will resign. The UK response was, no one in our team has the capacity nor the means to organize a delivery project from London to Moscow. So since I believe in miracles, I contacted a private airline company to sponsor the project. And to our surprise, it offered to transport not only the 65,000 letters and postcards, which were piling up, but also an invitation for a delegation of 26 children and youth to visit Moscow and deliver the letters to Madame Raisa Gorbachev at the Kremlin, the wife of the Russian president, to transmit to him the letters from the children. It developed into a great project, and we had so much fun and full of joy and excitement. And everyone was thrilled by the wonderful trip to Moscow, the reception in the Kremlin, the many discussions and sharing of letters and paintings with the then First Lady, Raisa Gorbachova, and the large media presence at the main hall in the Kremlin. We succeeded in realizing our dream, and the event was covered on Russian TV and in the Geneva press. After the trip to Moscow, the time had come for me to turn over my leadership position at the Swiss Hunger Project, and I stepped down from the board after 10 years. I then created in 1991 the Women's World Summit Foundation, this international campaign for the promotion and realization of women's and children's rights, with the mandate to create new avenues and ideas to help advance building a more just and peaceful world order. During 1991 and 1993, our first 3 years of building the agenda of the foundation, we organized 3 international fact-finding missions in Geneva, in Bombay, and in Dakar, Senegal, to connect with registered networks and partners and who joined the WWSF Foundation. In 1994, WWSF organized an international workshop on the UN 2000 goals in Dakar, Senegal, in collaboration with attending local and international women's organizations, mostly from Africa, but also from other countries, that produced the Dakar Declaration for 75%, of which I share with you today some excerpts, as it was our first attempt to break the glass ceiling and introduce the notion that women and children represent 75% of the world population. That's 6 billion in today's measurement. To represent 75% of the world population, and needed to be included in decision-making processes where decisions are being taken in our name. I share with you some selected excerpts from the published 1975 Dakar Declaration 30 years ago, which can be downloaded also in English and French from our website. And I cite, we, women in Africa, women of Africa, Latin America, Asia, Europe, and Oceania, meeting in Dakar at the second International Workshop of UN 2000 Goals, organized at the initiative by the Women's Summit Foundation and hosted in Dakar by the association called Yevo Yevi for the liberation of women, to discuss the theme towards the 21st century, women and children in Africa. Here we present the Dakar Declaration for a better future for women and children of the world. Other excerpts of this declaration are continued. We women denounce the scandal of marginalization, exploitation, and subordination of women and children, who represent 75% of the world population on the eve of the third millennium. And I continue. Just and sustainable economic and social development for all, and the establishment of democratic societies which respect the rights of women and children, must be achieved in collaboration with women and children, who constitute most of the world population. The fight against poverty, disease, and ignorance must become a major preoccupation of the international community. The ambition of women is no longer to lighten the burden of poverty, but to eradicate it. No longer to be literate, but to have access to different kinds of knowledge. No longer to survive, but to live. We women today want to be the principal actors in the structural changes which go to the very roots of underdevelopment, economic and social inequalities between races, nations, social classes, and sexes. That is why we want to make political and social participation a reality on the level of the family and the local community, as well as on the state and international level. More excerpts from the declaration. We women want to take part in political decision-making to put an end to war, violence, hate, racism, exclusion, and intolerance. We wish to build peace. We therefore want to banish vertical power structures and authoritarianism, to develop sharing and cooperative cultures where negotiations and dialogue are the chief virtues. Consequently, we call upon the governments to repeal discriminatory laws and implement the UN binding conventions and legal instruments which guarantee the rights of women and children. We are convinced that equality, development, and peace, which constitute the background of all the world conferences organized by the UN, will only be reached when the disequilibrium and inequalities between North and South, between social classes and those two regions, and between races and sexes are abolished. For this reason, we women of the North and the South meeting in Dakar appeal to the solidarity among women which transcends differences, to reinforce them in their vision, both individually and collectively, and to favor a vast coalition of women and children. We women also call upon the conscience of the international community to support the women and children in Africa, especially in their efforts to reconquer their dignity and build sustainable development. This support must be based on a partnership and new forms of solidarity stemming from the initiatives that women and children in Africa are taking daily to respond to the challenges they face. These new forms of solidarity must aim at the cancellation of Africa's debt, which should be converted into various forms of support for development programs benefiting women and children. This solidarity should influence the donor agencies to promote a humane adjustment as a step in the process of eliminating poverty. These new forms of solidarity must be negotiated with the populations concerned in a spirit of dignity and with respect for cultural differences. Only then will it be possible to speak of a global village and of the Dakar Declaration. But as I said before, there are many more aspects that are developed in the declaration, and you can download it on our website. So the full Dakar Declaration 75% is a strong message, still valid today, 30 years later, in our broken world, struggling with power sharing, including the 6 billion of us who rise and claim a seat at the table to co-lead the world in which we live. After the success of the Dakar conference and back in Geneva, I contacted UNICEF to share the Dakar Declaration with them, who replied that they are promoting the rights of the child only and cannot get involved. I also sent a copy to CEDAW, the women's rights section at the UN, with the response that they work for women's rights only and cannot include children's rights in their convention. We realized that the time had not come to promote 75% campaign and decided to put the project on hold, waiting for a better opportunity. That opportunity came to me as a leader of the foundation in 2022, where we relaunched the 75 campaign, published a new concept note in English and French, and began to organize Zoom events to get the word out and present it at the UN in Geneva, where I shared about our plans for the WWSF leadership training forums for women and children, leading from the heart, serving humanity. To stress the urgency in my talk, I shared that the UN Secretary General Progress Report on SDG agenda on the 25th of April 2023, he presented an alarming inventory of the world situation, the state of our global leadership we live with today. And I just bring you a few excerpts of this incredible report that everybody must read by Guterres, Mr. Guterres, the SG of the UN. And he says, addressing the presidents and excellencies, halfway of the deadline for the 2030 agenda, we are leaving more than half of the world behind. We have stalled or gone into reverse on more than 30% of the SDGs. Hunger has increased and is back to 2005 levels. Gender equality is some 300 years away, predicts the World Economic Forum. Just 26 people have the same wealth as half of the world's population. Many developing countries cannot invest in the SDGs because they face a financial black hole, and many are buried under a mountain of debt. Flows of official development assistance are far below the long-standing commitment of 0.7% of the GDP that was promised 30 years ago. So something is fundamentally wrong with the rules and governance of the system that produces such outcomes. Climate finance is also far below in their commitments. And the agreements reached in 2015 in New York, Addis, and Paris stand for peace and prosperity, people and planet. That promise is now in peril. So I share that with you because it brought back to us that we have not advanced in anything. We have gone backwards. And the UN Secretary General's statement said that the litany of lost opportunities has many causes. Chief among them is the fundamental inequality and injustice in international relations that run from global institutions, including the UN, through the international financial architecture, the top private banks, and credit ratings agencies. These institutions reflect the global reality of 78 years ago. They are out of date and out of time. End quote. So this report has us recommit to continue the development of the promotion of 75% campaign for 75% leadership training forums for women and youth leading from the heart, where the world population can learn and claim again their right in being included in decision-making processes with different outcomes. Our leadership crisis around the world needs to be addressed urgently, not only by civil society, but by every citizen that cares for a viable future for our children and grandchildren who are asking tough questions about the state of the world and the planet and who deserve honest answers. WWSF is preparing the 2025 leadership training events, and we will inform you of the dates and topics as we move forward, because we will need the knowledge and the quality of world goodwill in presenting in our leadership training effort the rules and qualities that the world must today respect. We also hope that the UN Summit for the Future held last September in New York will catalyze a powerful, intergovernmentally negotiated, action-oriented pact for the future. Before closing, I wish to share with you very briefly another upcoming annual campaign, which is our prize for women's creativity in rural life, giving credit where it's due. A project created in 1994, which also celebrates its 30th anniversary this year, with the aim to increase visibility and empowerment for the many women living in the rural communities around the world, producing most of the food for their families and communities, feeding daily large families, fetching 90% of the water on foot from far distances in Africa, raising many children, caring for the sick and the elderly without little recognition and support, and with no time left for them to learn about new technologies, nor about their basic human rights to education, development, and peace. Okay, I'll stop here because I could go on for a long time, and you will find information how to nominate candidates on our website, www.woman.ch, and you go into the Rural Women section. So I thank you very much for your listening, and I'm available for your questions.
Thank you so much, Ellie, for this very inspiring and also intriguing talk of yours. I think in Dutch, but maybe in other languages too, there is a saying: where there is a will, there is a way, and you are really an example of that saying, getting things done, even though the signs are going in the other direction. It's an impressive track which you have done with your organization, and I appreciate very much that you are all over the years continuing your battle, which is, as you said yourself, very very necessary. Please, if you for the participants, if you want to contribute or you want to make a comment, raise your hand and we will give you the floor. We have one. Maybe we will give first the floor to David. David, can you unmute, please?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we do.
Yes, I have a question for Ellie. What about, can you tell us what you've been able to do about child labor and forced marriage? If there are problems that your organization can cover?
Okay, thank you for your question. Yes, this is all part of the big tragedy, especially in Africa, okay, where they give children into marriage as of the age of 9, okay? And I am always so startled that how can a man take a child as his wife who still wants to play with dolls, who has absolutely no idea. Her body is not developed enough for such um, enterprises. And it is really a huge problem. The UN has tried to convene all the African countries, the 54 African countries met in Geneva several times to discuss this. And the culture is so powerful that it looks like nothing is changing. So we need a miracle.
Thank you, Ellie. We have Shide. Shide, can you unmute, please?
Yes. Can you hear me?
We do.
Yes.
Thank you, Minta. Thank you, Ellie, both for wonderful presentations and meditations. Ellie, thank you so much for the work you've been doing on behalf of women and children and demonstrating so clearly the cleavages in the processes between women's work and children's work and all the obstacles that you discussed so clearly and with such dispassion. It was very inspiring. The question I have for you is that clearly the United Nations as an organization is part of the problem, given that the nations that go to build it are also not holding the right relationships between each other. So if you were to choose another pathway and another way other than the United Nations, clearly you've worked very creatively and imaginative in this and overcome many obstacles. What other avenue is there open to us other than the system, which may not be quite as pliable and flexible as we'd like it to be?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
very much so.
Okay, thank you for your question. I'm very, very happy that you did pose that question because we are running into a conflict because UN Women is a wonderful organization. I love most of the work of the UN, okay? And the work for equality is so powerful, it's good, but it's not going anywhere. It's like the men don't care about 50-50. And so the 75% is breaking out of that concept and giving power to women, children, and youth. We are 6 billion on the planet and have nothing to say. We have nothing to say. And a small group of world leaders are deciding on all the weapons and all the wars and everything that is causing this downfall of our whole civilization. And that's why I fight for the 75% to have a listening. And how do we get into that? I'm not yet there. We are looking at how our training sessions can portray organizations like Voix Libre, I don't know if you know this organization, who break through all this stuff and create programs and responses to unbelievable problems, like the children that are used as of 7 years age to be in mines, okay? In Bolivia, for example, okay? How to get these children out of the mines and get them into school and for them to have a childhood. And these projects receive no visibility, no, not much visibility, but should be duplicated. We should learn from them. And that's what I would like to do, is to share these powerful groups that work from the heart, that serve from the heart, that lead their organizations from the heart, and make daily miracles. Okay, but I am not yet there. So if you can join me, we could make a presentation to Mr. Guterres. That Mr. Guterres, for me, he is an angel. I admire him every day. And I think that he may be able to break through and give humanity the power to say, stop these leaders who decide on our death, on our unbelievable status of where we are with poverty and so many other things. I don't want to get emotional. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ellie. We understand that it's a battle of your life. It's a battle of many of our people too. Michael, do we still have time for one or two questions?
Yes, I think so.
Okay. Char, can you unmute, please?
Thank you. Ellie, thank you so much for your passionate presentation and for the work you're doing. I want to ask, I'm hoping is a simple question, but may not be. And that is, those of us who are listening to what you have to say today, is there something or a few things that each of us could do to practically support the programs that you have created and that I think all of us would agree, need our attention? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for this question. Yeah, there's a lot. You know, like in the Hunger Project, I did learn that individually the people would start their own giving and learning and demonstrating about situations. And that was not supported by the UN. That civil society had created such a powerful campaign. It was already all over the world, but the UN did not support it. So it didn't have the power it needed to confront our leaders that society wants a different program, a different vision. But I'm not criticizing anybody. We're all at our level of learning. And what you can do is, you see on our website, we have a concept note in English and French. You can register as a member, not as an individual. We prefer that it is organizations that then can use the 75% inside their own organizational programs and hang it on as an additional vision for the future. Because we are not advancing the way we are going. We need to break out and ask the world leaders. We need to be included in designing or co-designing the space in which we live, the space in which we raise our children, the space in which you use our economic system, and the space for peace building, not war building. And this needs to be so strong, and we need to create this with millions of women and children and also men who care about it, that this becomes the norm. Because at the moment, I don't see not much hope.
We take one last question. Sam, can you unmute, please?
First of all, thank you so much, Minsa and Ellie, and the whole group. Light and love to you all. It's something that's been in my mind for a long, long time. So many countries could leap what we're doing so wrong with all our oil and our pollution and everything, whereas these other countries now have the possibility to leapfrog us really and gain their own power by doing all the new modern and environmental energy and so forth. And they need, we need to support them in that. I mean, I know there's many projects where they are sort of doing pieces, but we've still got people trying to exploit them all the time, and it's just so sad.
Yeah, yes, there is so much to do because our education has to change, because most of the young people, I have some interns and stagiaires, and yes, and I always ask them, what motivates you? What do you want to achieve in the world? They just said, well, we want to earn a good living and we want to have a good life, etc. And they are looking to pursue their own interests, and they have a right to do that. But it is becoming so overpowering that thinking only about your own interests is, it's not creating right human relations. We can move forward with that. Even my grandson, okay, when he was 11 years old or 12 years old, and I asked him, a question about something, and he said, Grandma, it's not to my interest to do that. And I was so shocked. And I thought to myself, where did he learn this phrase? It's not to my interest. Why? Our life is not for our own interest. It is to serve humanity. I don't know if that answers your question.
Thank you so much, Ella. And I think your last phrase summarizes so very well what you are doing and what we try to do. Our life is not for ourselves. Our lives, or we are here to serve. So I would like to conclude with excuses for those who still have other questions, but we have to stick a little bit to our time. I think it was excellent. So thank you very, very much for a very, very inspiring presentation.
Thank you.
I think Michael, over to you for the last slide. Yes. So before I forget, thank you to all, not only to Ella, of course, but also to all of you who participated in this webinar. Thank you very, very much for your contribution and for your time, and hope to see you next time. Thank you very much.